She's the queen of the gods, but if you've ever read the myths, she's almost always the villain. The jealous wife, the vengeful goddess, the woman who hunts her husband's lovers and curses their children. That's the image the storytellers gave her. But what if that image wasn't the truth at all? What if Hera, the so-called goddess of jealousy, was never the problem? What if she was the only one trying to hold a collapsing world together, while the men around her rewrote the rules to suit themselves? Because here's the thing, when a woman enforces order, she's controlling. When a man does it, he's divine. And Hera, she spent 3,000 years paying for that double standard. This isn't the story of a jealous queen. This is the story of the most misunderstood ruler in Olympus, the goddess who built civilization itself and was vilified for it. Let's strip back the centuries of gossip and look at who Hera really was. In the beginning, before the poets and dramatists turned her into Zeus's bitter wife, Hera was worshipped as a great mother. In Argos, in Samos, in Mycenae, long before the Olympian pantheon even solidified, Hera was a sovereign in her own right. Her temples were older than Zeus's myths. Her cult centered on fertility, marriage, the protection of women, and, more importantly, the social contract itself. Hera wasn't just a goddess of marriage in the romantic sense. She was the goddess of order, of structure, of loyalty, of what kept civilization from tearing itself apart. When the myths say she upheld marriage, they mean she upheld oaths, the invisible bonds that make society possible. Then came Zeus, the storm god from Thessaly, a newcomer ambitious, charming, reckless, and somewhere in the collision between these two archetypes, the enforcer of order and the bringer of chaos. The old world of the goddess began to change forever because Hera didn't start as Zeus's wife. She became his equal only after a cosmic struggle, and the storytellers never forgave her for it. The earliest story of Hera and Zeus isn't a love story, it's a conquest. According to ancient fragments, Zeus wanted Hera, not because he loved her, but because her power made him legitimate. Without her, his reign would have been lawless thunder. With her, Olympus gained order, hierarchy, permanence. But Hera refused him at first. She didn't want to be conquered, so Zeus transformed himself into a wounded cuckoo bird, shivering in the rain outside her window. When she took pity on the creature and held it to her breast, Zeus shed the disguise and claimed her. And by claimed, the old texts don't imply romance. They imply domination. It's a metaphor, yes, but a dark one. A goddess of sovereignty forced into marriage to make her divine counterpart legitimate. And from that moment forward, every myth about Hera became a story about what happens when power is taken from a woman and then punished when she fights to reclaim it. The poets love to tell us that Hera was jealous when Zeus gave birth to Athena alone, splitting open his own skull to bring forth his favourite daughter. But the older versions say Hera's jealousy wasn't about pettiness, it was about balance. The birth of Athena symbolised Zeus's attempt to bypass the feminine altogether, to create wisdom and civilization without a mother. So Hera answered him in kind. She struck the earth and conceived Hephaestus alone, the god of fire and craft. It wasn't revenge, it was protest. It was Hera saying, "If you can create without me, then so can I." Of course, later storytellers turned that act into cruelty, claiming she rejected Hephaestus because he was lame, casting him from Olympus. But think about it. Hephaestus, the god of technology and invention, remained loyal to her above all others. He built her throne, her golden chariot, her palace gates, Does that sound like a son abandoned by his mother? Or a myth rewritten by men who couldn't stand the idea of a goddess creating life on her own terms? When Zeus fought the Titans to seize power, Hera wasn't some passive consort. She was the strategist, commanding divine forces alongside her brothers and sisters. The ancient hymns called her Hera the Shield, protector of Olympus. Without her alliances among the older gods and spirits of nature, Zeus might never have secured his throne. And yet, when the poets wrote the epic centuries later, Hera's military leadership vanished. She was reduced to the nagging wife, complaining about his affairs. It's as if history remembered the thunder, but forgot who built the storm. Then there's Io, the myth everyone points to when they call Hera cruel. You know the story? Zeus falls for Io, a mortal priestess of Hera's temple. To hide his infidelity, he turns Io into a cow Hera, enraged, sends a 100-eyed monster to guard her. Eventually Hermes kills the monster, Zeus frees Io, and Hera's painted as the villain, punishing an innocent woman out of jealousy. But in older versions, Io wasn't random. She was Hera's priestess, a woman violated under the goddess's protection. So ask yourself, why would Hera curse her own devotee? She didn't. She cursed Zeus's deception. The myth is really a metaphor for what happens when sacred boundaries are broken, when power uses disguise to exploit faith. In later retellings, Hera's fury was recast as jealousy to make Zeus's transgression seem charming, even romantic. It's the same tactic used for centuries after. Demonize the woman who speaks out, sanctify the man who causes the harm. Another story, another scapegoat. When Zeus's affairs multiplied, he used nymphs to distract Hera so his lovers could escape. Echo was one of them, a talkative forest spirit who could charm any listener. When Hera discovered the deceit, she punished Echo by taking away her voice, leaving her only the power to repeat the words of others. It sounds cruel, but symbolically, it's devastatingly human. Echo becomes the embodiment of how truth is lost. How women's voices echo back, fragmented, distorted, never believed. It's not the act of a jealous wife. It's a divine mirror held up to patriarchy itself. Every time someone says Hera silenced her, they forget she's reflecting the very system that silenced her. No myth cemented Hera's villain status more than her rivalry with Heracles. She's blamed for every trial, every curse, every monster he faces. But look closer. Heracles was Zeus's illegitimate son, another mortal-born heir threatening Hera's divine order. She doesn't try to kill him out of spite. She forces him to prove himself worthy of the title hero. In almost every labour, Hera's influence makes him stronger, wiser, more cunning. She's not destroying him. She's refining him. And when he finally dies, what happens? Hera grants him immortality and welcomes him to Olympus. The supposed tormentor becomes the gatekeeper to his apotheosis. Tell me again who the villain is. Fast forward to the Trojan War, one of the greatest theatres of divine politics. Hera, alongside Athena, champions the Greeks. Aphrodite backs the Trojans. In Homer's Iliad, Hera's portrayed as scheming and vindictive, manipulating Zeus, seducing him to distract him from the battlefield. But what's really happening is diplomacy. Hera is playing the only game the gods allow her to play, influence through cunning, not brute force. When Zeus uses deception, he's called wise. When Hera uses strategy, she's called deceitful. Her role in the war isn't about jealousy, it's about justice. The Trojans broke sacred oaths by abducting Helen. Hera, goddess of oaths, demands balance. And that's what she's done from the beginning. enforce accountability, even when the violator is her own husband. So let's step back. Across every myth, a pattern emerges. Hera punishes deceit. She enforces vows. She protects sanctity, whether of marriage, temple, or truth. And every time she does, the storytellers call it jealousy. Why? Because in the ancient world, and in the societies that inherited those myths, female power had to be framed as emotional, irrational, or destructive. Hera wasn't the goddess of jealousy, she was the goddess of boundaries. And that terrified people. She drew lines. She said, no. In a pantheon built on male conquest, she was the one divine being who demanded consequence. So they gave her the oldest punishment in the book. They turned her into a caricature. Now imagine Hera not as Zeus's nagging wife, but as the administrator of divine law. The matriarch who kept Olympus from imploding under the weight of its own corruption. The one who knew that unrestrained power, even divine power, needed checks and balances. Her fury wasn't madness, it was moral clarity. Her vengeance wasn't cruelty, it was consequence. Every curse she laid, every punishment she inflicted, every act of wrath that poets condemned was really a message. No one, not even the king of the gods, is above accountability. And when you understand that, the entire mythology flips. Hera becomes the backbone of Olympus, the quiet architect of justice. And the jealous wife becomes the last defender of divine order. Sound familiar? Powerful women still get rewritten the same way. When a woman holds a boundary, she's cold. When she refuses corruption, she's vindictive. When she dares to demand justice, she's crazy. It's Hera's story all over again, replayed in boardrooms, governments, headlines. We still live in the empire her mythology helped build, where male ambition is divine and female authority is suspect. But Hera's legend, the real one, shows how that narrative was never truth, it was propaganda. Because the moment she stopped being a mother goddess and became a queen, the poets sharpened their pens. They couldn't handle a woman with sovereignty, so they called her jealous instead. Hera's legacy is the cost of order. She is the one who keeps Olympus upright while everyone else breaks their vows. She is the storm after the betrayal, the silence after the lie. And when you hear her name now, you should not think of jealousy. You should think of justice, because what they never told you about Hera is that she wasn't punishing love. She was punishing disrespect. She wasn't obsessed with control. She was fighting for balance. And she didn't stay with Zeus because she was weak. She stayed because she was the queen of Olympus, and queens don't abdicate when the throne gets messy. So the next time someone calls her the jealous goddess, correct them. Tell them Hera was the law that even Zeus feared. And remember, she wasn't the goddess who lost her temper. She was the goddess who refused to lose her crown. If this breakdown changed how you see the Queen of the Gods, hit that subscribe button, because next we're diving into another misunderstood divine figure. Hades, the god who never kidnapped anyone. Myth after myth, we're peeling back the lies and finding the truth buried beneath. This is Mythos Archive, where the gods finally get to tell their side of the story.